Hello and welcome to Loveworklife 60-minute mentors. I've just been told by Paul the intro I sound a bit like a Radio 2 DJ of a very poor quality, which thanks for that, Paul. So as people are logging in, it's much appreciated. We've had lots and lots of questions come through again this week, which is awesome. So thank you very much. Keep those questions coming through. What's nice to see is that lots of people logging in. What it's not nice to see is that the weather is pretty poor out there again. So whoever's turned the weather off, can you please switch it back on for us? Because I'm going camping this weekend and I don't want to freeze, basically. This week we've got the lovely Lauren McLeod with us, who is a marketing expert, we should say. So just to introduce Lauren, she's got extreme amount of recruitment experience. She spent 9 years at Michael Page, being the head of media and online marketing. She then moved to Morgan Hunt and spent 5 years at Morgan Hunt as the marketing director. And then she moved into Red, who's a global SAP recruitment agency. During that time, she's done lots and lots of brand refreshes, lots of marketing-based activities, all about driving sales and increasing brand awareness. So we've been privileged by Paul say we've been very privileged to have Lauren work with us over the last couple of weeks, helping us develop our new strategy, which will be coming out in September. And it's important that we think that marketing is at the core of people's business strategy to make sure you're driving business towards you. So as we sort of open up and wait for people to come on, I want to sort of really give Lauren a quick question to sort of open up with. You've been talking to Paul and I quite a lot over the last 4 or 5 months regarding the 3 C's. And I always class the 3 C's as clients, candidates, and consultants. But you have a different 3 C's from a marketing perspective. What are those 3 C's, and can you sort of give us a full breakdown for them?
Of course. Firstly, thank you very much, Howard and Paul, for having me on as guest speaker in your very well-attended webinars that happen weekly. I've heard a lot of positive things about them. So thank you to that. And thank you to everyone for logging on today and giving us your time. Back to Howard's question around the 3 C's. The 3 C's is a business model that supports you uncover the strengths of your company to satisfy your customer needs in a better way than your competitors, giving you that competitive edge. So if you take that model and line it up to marketing, it helps you identify how marketing can support your business on the road to resilience, and to determine what marketing you can consider now to positively influence not only how you ride out the storm, but also how you elevate your starting position as we begin to emerge. So the 3 C's in contrast to what Howard was saying, from my perspective, first one is company. So that is about really understanding and knowing your company incredibly well. So what is the purpose behind your brand? Why do you do what you do? What's your voice, your values, your personality? And by defining that purpose and your vision and your promise and your culture, it enables you to carefully align the short and the long-term strategies to create a sustainable competitive advantage. And when you're considering how to do this, you need to ask the type of questions around why you exist, what differentiates you, what problems do you solve, why should people care? And what attributes do you want to be associated to your brands? And what promise do you make your customers? That leads me on to the second C, which is customers. So knowing your customers is about understanding your target market, really determining what that buyer persona values from your brand so that you can identify how your brand fits into that story. And you need to ask yourself the types of questions that you would be using to engage with your customers. So what pain points do you solve? How do you make your clients feel? How are you different? Why do your clients trust you? And how can you strengthen those partnerships? And the third C is competitors. And that's about understanding your competitors. And that doesn't mean mimicking or imitating your competitors. Information is knowledge, and you want to learn how they operate, what marketing tactics they're utilizing, how they're building their brand, so that you can identify strategies that are effective, what has less impact, and actually use and adapt some of those strategies that works with your business to still make you unique. So the questions you want to look at there is the competitor consistent with their messaging? Actually, consistency is a point that I suspect the 3 of us are going to speak about a lot throughout the day, but we'll get onto that in a little bit. What is the quality of the competitors' services? Do they have an online presence? Do they have reviews so you can see how customers are engaging with them? And in what way do they market their business? So at first, this tool or this general thought process might seem like a nice to have, given all the challenges that everyone is facing in this difficult time. But if you give it a chance, you'll soon realize how valuable this discovery, let's call it the discovery exercise, is, because it forces you to maintain a complete view of your business in a structured way, so that you can focus on accelerating growth and building a brand that lasts and can actually weather the uncertain climate that is potentially ahead of us. And companies will likely know their competitors, or at the very least what services they're offering. They will also be a level of insights into their customers and their way of thinking at a top level. But since the outbreak of the pandemic, it's upended our daily lives and routines as we know it. So has your customers' priorities shifted in some way? And do you know the answer to that? And the third one is, coming back to the companies, can you hand on heart say that you really know your company? And what I mean, yes, you know your company, you know what you do and how you do it, but do you know why you do it? And that why is really important.
It's interesting when we talk about the why and how that why works and how important it is. Both Paul and I have sort of worked in sort of some bigger sort of organizations from there. And in our own business, just recently, we've done a project with you, Lauren. And so, Paul, let's sort of try help sort of the listeners to understand and sort of mystify that sort of why, and understanding why that why is important, to go through a little bit of what Lauren's been doing with us over the last sort of 2 or 3 months to help Love Work Life, and what will be the new Love Work Life in the future look like.
Well, thanks. Firstly, good morning, everybody. And it seems like at the end of the world, Armageddon is here, as far as I can see. I've had to put the lights on. It's pitch black over glorious, gorgeous Essex at the moment. So I hope the weather is a little bit kinder to you where you are. And it's great to have Lauren on board. I think it's fair to say that although Lauren is unquestionably, and she'll kill me for saying this, a marketing genius, she's also award-winning, but there is no doubt at all that the highlight of her career were the 3 years when I was mentoring her, and I'm sure she will be the first to admit that she's never experienced such a high as that. Have you, Lauren?
Something like that, Paul.
Something like that.
I'll get the bucket, Lauren.
Yeah, don't blame you for that. I mean, I'm delighted that Lauren's joined us, and Lauren's done some brilliant work, as Howard has said, with us recently in trying to define our purpose as a business. And I think this is a very important point. I can sort of talk about what we've been doing, and I'll also talk about perhaps my days when I was the CEO of Office Angels. And the interesting thing about this definition of who you are, why you exist, why anybody would care about your business, why anyone would use you, is very important, because it plays not only to the way in which the public, your candidates and your clients view you, it also informs you regarding how you manage your business. Because we've talked in the past about EVP, employer value proposition, and this is very much a part of that. Understanding who you are, what you are, why you exist is so important. And I think that once you've got your head around that, making decisions about what's right for your company, right down to the kind of people you recruit, the decisions you make regarding margins, the decisions you make regarding business development, the businesses, the clients you work with, and so forth, all become much easier to make when you have this very strong understanding of who you are and what you are and why you exist. And I think that also plays to the values of your business and the behaviors of your business and the behaviors of you and your people. So really getting this all-encompassing understanding of where you sit as an organization, your cultural identity, really plays to the way you then market your brand. And Laura made a good point earlier. It is important to be aware of your competitors and how they market themselves, or indeed, in most instances, their complete lack of marketing. But I wouldn't become too obsessed by what they're doing. And I'm sure Lauren would agree with me here. You know, my attitude when running Office Angels, and in particular recently, of course, with Howard, Love Work Life, has been to work on us and who we are and what we want to be, and let our competitors worry more about us than we worry about them. Now, that isn't taking an arrogant stance, because in our industry, indeed in any business, being arrogant is a very bad fault. It's certainly not that, but it is mostly about focusing on identifying how we as an organization, and certainly at Office Angels, provided outstanding service to our clients and our candidates to the extent that we became the market leader in our particular sector. And arguably at the time, I'm not even sure it was arguably, pound for pound, the best recruitment business in the country. And a point that I'm always rubbing Lauren's nose in over this is that I was head of marketing at Office Angels and PR for a period of time. And at that point, we were getting, through our marketing and PR work, 10 times more media coverage than the entire recruitment industry put together. And that is a complete fact. So, Miss McLeod, you're going to have to beat me on this point. But, it had enormous an impact on our business and our sense of worth, our sense of belonging to the company and who we were. And we're going to come back to that point in terms of the impact it has on staff retention and pride in the business. But I think that the work that Lauren's been doing with us in helping us to truly understand our positioning in the market and what we will be offering as we go forward from September onwards to our customers has been invaluable. And it's certainly about really drilling down to understand the identity of your organization.
So I find it, through that process that we've done, the three of us and the other people that have been involved in it, it's, to me, it's that discovery piece of actually discovering genuinely who you are. And everyone talks about sort of going through your teenage years, have you discovered who you are yet, etc. And I think a lot of business needs to go through that and discover who you are. And when you truly sort of discover what your business actually stands for and what it means, and then how you're driving that back out into your consultants, and that's the most important thing from a managerial point of view, is that if you're creating values and you're creating your brand, then you need to live and be that brand and be those values and drive that in. And I think that's a really interesting sort of conversation that certainly Paul, I and Lauren had and a few others had when we talked about what does the brand stand for, what does it look like when we go out to the marketplace, how's that felt by everybody else. And it's creating that feeling of value, that feeling of passion, that feeling of drive going forward that marketing can give you if everyone suddenly understands what that's aligned. So marketing isn't this mythical sort of beast that people sort of don't understand. It should be right in the heart of your business, and all your consultants should be living that brand and that strategy. And if you start to look at, say, we talk a lot about people like Apple and people like Coca-Cola. When you walk into the Apple store, you get that feeling of value, you get that feeling of consultative sort of behavior and what they're doing with you. If you then walk into an EE phone shop or a Phones for You type phone shop, you get that different feeling because they're trying to drive their sales into you, because they're all about sales, where Apple's very different on that sort of the front. And then you start to talk about how your brand is then perceived by clients. It's all about the value that you can create. And if we look at the marketplace now, we've talked an awful lot about how the marketplace is becoming very, very similar. Everyone's got the same tools. Everyone's got the same view of what's going forward. So the thing that's going to change now is value that we can provide to our clients. But how do our clients know that we have value? And that's about what we actually put out in a marketing point of view. But then when they come and talk to us, they have to, again, experience that value. There's no point having a great marketing strategy, but when you walk into the business, it's completely opposite. So that everything has to be aligned and everything has to be moved going forward. So I think using your brand, Lauren, as we talked about there, to define your purpose is really important. So can you talk us through what you mean by defining your purpose by using your brand?
Yeah, of course, Howard. So really the purpose of purpose, when you think about it. So what do I mean? If I take it back to the 3 C's that I mentioned earlier, and forgive me, I am a hand person, so I'm constantly, gesticulating and getting really excited about my topic. So I'm trying to keep my hands down so it's not going to cause any disruption to the content. So what I mean by knowing your company and what you can do right now, I mentioned the fact that most companies know what they do and how they do it, but they don't always know why. And that why is your purpose. It's your purpose that keeps you focused on why you do what you do. And it pushes your business to focus on action because it articulates your why as a company, which helps your customers and your employees connect with you. There's a popular TED talk by Simon Sinek on the golden circles, so the how, the what, and the why, which frames this exercise really eloquently and simply. And the point behind it is that people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And that's your differentiator. Successful businesses have created strong brands with a purpose to accelerate profitability and build long-term value. So by taking that time now, why you exist, your vision, by defining why you exist, your vision, your promise, your values, and your overall proposition, you will accelerate more quickly in the future, but also be able to sustain any uncertain changes ahead of us. Because those strong brands, and I don't necessarily mean big brands, just strong brands, those strong brands actually realize a 32% higher billing rate. They close higher percentage of new business, and they generate new leads earlier and less expensively. And the primary commonality that these strong brands have is consistency. And actually, I mentioned this when I first mentioned the 3 C's, and let's call it the 4th C because it has that level of importance to it that is consistent with the other 3 C's. And the reason it's important is because brand consistency makes your brand feel more dependable because it builds trust. So customers identify with a brand when they know them on a personal level. And it's that long-standing concept that purchasing is more of an emotional one than a practical one. And that's why you want to engage the right emotions with your customers, build that level of trust so that they will constantly come back to you. It also strengthens your brand recall because you're being consistent across all the channels. You're providing consistently dependable experience. And it avoids portraying conflicting personalities or creating confusion by potentially some of your employees might be portraying conflicting personalities because they don't understand the why yet. And therefore they're trying to come up with new ways to be creative. And that just takes time, but also isn't conveying the company purpose. And finally, it actually does increase your customer retention because when your customers know you, they'll identify with you and your purpose and they'll trust you, which means they're more likely to use your services and also recommend you to their peers. And that increases your customer retention. So the consistency provides stability to not only you, but also to your employees and to your customers. So I mentioned about employees sometimes taking a lot of time to come up with something innovative to grab someone's attention. But actually, by having that consistent brand purpose, it will reduce that effort and actually increase their efficiency because they'll have the assets at their fingertips to convey that consistent experience across all the channels. And another way to look at it from a business perspective is that recruitment sometimes faces challenges with retention. And actually having that brand purpose, it's not just about conveying it across your content or your marketing channels. Actually, it can be converted to be in every process that the recruitment business handles. And for example, you can incorporate it into your hiring process, which is absolutely pivotal because from a retention perspective, at the very entry level, it starts with interviewing the right candidate first and offering the right candidate the job. So when you're speaking to your candidates at interview level and you're talking about your purpose and your values and your behavioral compass and as an organization, they can give you examples of how they're aligned to it. And they feel that they are bought into your purpose and they can see career progression. They want to work with you. So it means that you're hiring the right people that are aligned with your purpose first, which means it'll increase your retention. And it also it reduces the approach of your managers hiring in their likeness and actually in line with your purpose, which also opens up your talent pool. So not only will it increase your retention in the long term because you've hired the right people in line with your purpose, it also means that your hiring managers are consistent with their message. So, it might feel like taking a step back.
So,
hello, I've just lost you, gents.
You still there, Lauren? We can still hear you.
You can still hear me? Great. I just can't see anything on the screen. So as long as you can hear me.
Okay. Yeah, we can still hear you.
Fantastic.
Yeah, just keep talking, Lauren. I think everyone can still hear you.
Great. I have no idea. I seem to be plugged in, so I'm not entirely sure what's happened there, but I'll just keep talking. So it might feel like a step back when your priority is focused on so many different things at the moment. And it also might feel like a nice to have, especially if you're not going to see instant measurable results. And you'd be right to a point. It is an emotive exercise, but so is buying. And because recruitment is at every aspect of people business, people have emotions. So take the time to get to know your company and share it with employees to enable you to formulate a consistent brand that can be incorporated into all your assets, into everything you do to accelerate your growth.
I think that's a really interesting sort of point about, you know, your employees and then bringing new employees into the business and how they match up to that brand. And I think, Paul, we've talked an awful lot about the importance of small brands, big brands, and how they work and what effect it has on the client's perception of the business. And it's the client's perception that's really important. And I can give you a prime example of this, that I worked with a company that had been doing zero marketing and zero branding whatsoever. And I am by no shakes a marketeer, and but by no shakes would class myself anywhere near a marketing type person. But we had zero budget and zero money to build a brand, and so I took it on myself to start putting marketing material out into the domain, working in a very, very niche marketplace. And we started to do various different things, but made it very uniform, made it all about the client and all about the candidate. So it was all about our purpose to provide market information to the client marketplace and the candidate marketplace to help them expand their vision. And we'd gone to a trade show, and I was walking down the trade show and people started shouting at me, and I was wondering why they were shouting at me. And they'd seen the marketing that we'd done and seen what we're doing. Then they knew me from the marketing because we were doing almost a newsreel on every Friday. I then got cornered by a client who invited me to come and pitch for their business, and their business happened to be in Switzerland, a very large company in Switzerland. And we went up, we pitched with the client, and one of the first questions from the CEO of the business was, "Can you tell me how large your business is?" And when we said we were 8 people in Leeds, he stopped and turned to his sales director and said, "Why on earth am we speaking to these people? They're small fry." And he went, "No, you need to listen to these people. They are everywhere." And our marketing had meant that this guy thought we were a big player in the marketplace. So our marketing really sort of drove our purpose. And it was our purpose that when we talked to him about what we were doing, that really sort of led from there. So your marketing can really put you into places where you may never have been before based on your reputation, etc. So it was really important that as a small brand, we were taking on large brands, and our marketing was far more effective and gave us the perception that we were a really big brand and a brand to be trusted. We went on to deliver over a couple of £100,000 worth of recruitment to that client over a short period of time, and it was all based on our brand and how our brand perception was received by our client, that we were a quality service. And it's that important, and that got us into a great opportunity. And I'm sure, Paul, you've got similar sort of stories about brand and how brands helps your clients and clients that you've worked with into those marketplaces.
Yeah, I mean, just to pick up on that point, I mean, back in my Office Angels days, we were clearly, I don't know if you're allowed to say this any longer, but it was very clearly a feminine business, because our candidates were 90% women. You know, we were dealing in secretarial in those days work, and we had a tiny pinch of pink in our color scheme. And we decided to stop sitting on the fence and, if you like, feminize the brand. And we went for this shockingly pink color. I mean, it made your eyes bleed to look at the pink we chose. And a lot of people at the time said to me, you know, you're taking a big risk here because you're going to alienate men. And a lot of our clients, of course, were men. In fact, a percentage, as I've already said, of our candidate base and our temporary staff were men. But, you know, I just thought, and I think Lauren will agree with me, I remember thinking, you know, sitting on the fence is extremely uncomfortable. You know, you can get splinters somewhere, it's rather sensitive. So I thought it's time we decided to be what we clearly were and just be very bold and, if you like, even slightly provocative about who we are. So we decided to make it a very sort of feminine brand. And the people that were talking to me were saying that potentially we would lose business, as I said, because of this movement towards this very provocative color scheme and branding. The reality, our business completely took off. In fact, our temporary workforce grew from 10% men to 35-40% men during this period. A lot of our clients were really thrilled with what we were doing. I don't remember losing a single client because of that sort of provocative branding we were doing. And it taught me a lot. I think one of the things it also showed me very clearly at the time was the impact it had on our own people. The thing that perhaps we hadn't really given a tremendous amount of consideration to when we were thinking about the rebranding exercise was what people within the business, and by the end, by the way, when I was managing the business, I had 650 people, what they would think about the branding. But actually, the reality was they loved it, and they felt more and more pride in the business that they represented. The fact was we were also doing a lot of work on radio, on TV, broadcasting and so forth. And I think that it had a huge contribution to our staff retention. And Lauren made a point about that, the level of people, the level of time people stayed with our business. It decreased the amount of attrition we had from people coming and going. And because, to Lauren's point, the branding was very much in keeping with who we were, what we did. You couldn't possibly be under any illusions as to what our marketplace was and what we did. Because of that, I think that it had a big impact in terms of the view that the public had around us and our ability, when we opened new offices, to break into new business very quickly. People knew our brand, they knew who we were, they were open to discussion. Picking up the phone and having a conversation with them wasn't difficult. They agreed to meet us. And we created this huge level of publicity around the company. And you may think we spent a small fortune on it. I guess in relative terms, if I gave you the number, you'd think it was a lot of money. But relative to our turnover, it wasn't that high. It wasn't a massive percentage. And yet the impact and the positivity it gave our business was almost incalculable. And I've been a big fan of branding and marketing ever since. I know what impact it has. And these days, you can, as you said, Howard, you can create a persona for your business. You can make your business seem a much bolder, bigger brand, bigger company than it actually is. But you do have to be one thing. You have to be absolutely bought into what you're doing. And you have to be, to use Lauren's word, consistent with your marketing. It's really important that you stick with the messaging. You don't give up in the first few months if you feel it's not quite working. You stick with it. You carry on. And over a period of time, if you stick to your beliefs and you stick to your values and stick to your purpose, as Lauren has said, you will begin to see an increase in the level of engagement that people have with your company, both candidates and clients, but not less important, perhaps arguably more important, the engagement your own people have with your business.
I think that leads to a very sort of interesting question that says, when you start to look at your marketing, and I've been with lots of clients over the last couple of weeks talking about aligning sales strategy, aligning it to their people, but aligning your marketing strategy to your colleagues and to your clients' needs are really important. Now, we work very heavily on that, Lauren, sort of through our own brand and what we're sort of looking to push out in your brand. Can you give us an example or give me the explanation of what you mean by aligning your marketing to your colleagues and your client needs and why it's important?
Howard, there's no playbook for the situation that we're in at the moment. So the key is to be human. And that really is important because within crisis, you can provide clarity. So if you focus on nurturing if I focus on nurturing your existing relationships, and when I say relationships, I'm talking about your customers, your clients, your candidates, as well as your employees. So let's think about the Pareto principle, which states that 80% of consequences come from 20% of causes. So it's a general reminder that the relationship between input and output isn't balanced. So if we adapt this principle to your revenue as the consequence at 80%, by focusing on your existing customers, the people that are buying from you now, the theory is that a significant portion of your revenue comes from your loyal customer base, which is generated through your loyal employees, the 80-20 principle. Therefore, instead of going out and pushing for new business in a time when people are looking for reassurance and ways to reduce spend, focus on nurturing your existing customers and employees. Of course, if you get some new business on the back of it, you wouldn't turn it away. Happy days. But if you're focusing on your existing customers that are giving you that loyalty now, it means that that loyalty will continue in the future. So let's think about how we do that. compassionate, kind, authentic communication is absolutely key. Showing that you care in a very sensitive situation can offer valuable insights from their situation. And you know, as long as you're authentic and sensitive in your approach and your response, you can share steps your business is taking to focus on customers' needs, and keep communication consistent, not relentless, just consistent, and valuable. It needs to be valuable. So more people are online now than ever. There's an opportunity to refine your communication across those channels in a responsible and impactful way. So by understanding specific challenges that your audiences are facing and how they're approaching their hiring or finding roles, if they've altered, you know, how have their priorities been affected? That will help you formulate relevant content and communication to support them face those challenges. So you can extract this information from your customers through surveys, through polls, to collect valuable data that allows you to create that informed content. And not only will it help you provide or create content, valuable content, but it actually might also highlight some shifts that could affect how you approach your customers in the future and how you operate in a more consultative way going forward. So as an example, if you wanted to provide your clients with insights into what candidates are looking for now and in the future from employees, to give them the edge as they start to hire over their competitors, you know, the types of questions you could be asking your candidates, because you have the access to that database, is what 3 things do you need from your managers now more than ever? Has location crept up in your list of priorities when considering a new role? How have you found onboarding remotely if they're new starters? Or what is your biggest concern about returning to the office? So these are the type of questions you could be asking. Or if you're looking to advise your clients on the changing landscape of recruitment, you could ask your clients questions. How has your onboarding process changed during the pandemic? How have you found running your recruitment process remotely? You know, when do you expect to be in the office? What do you see as the most important factor in managing business through the pandemic and beyond? And how are you keeping your employees engaged? So being an employer yourself and having access to both that client and candidate audience, from these types of questions, you can see how there can be a number of answers that actually give you topics that you could evolve into a series of valuable insights for months to come. And if you then also, on the flip side of that, that's your sort of customer approach, but actually we also need to be focusing on your employee engagement. So prioritizing your people means that when you need them to step up and work together, your culture can flourish. So if companies can safeguard the livelihoods and health of those employees in an honest and transparent way, it will build engagement, which builds loyalty and retention. So this is a time when employees are not only scrutinizing their management, they're looking to leadership for support and direction. So how do you maintain that support and patience with your employees who are trying to balance that remote work to ensure that you remain that employer of choice now and in the future when the market will change? And that is communication. You know, you're no longer in the office, so you can't do your floor walks and check in on people's well-being and keep yourself visible. So regular communications helps your leadership team remain visible. Offer direction on external communication and best practices. So where you've seen some real success in how your employees have communicated or you've been communicated with your customers, share those successes so that people can actually use those themselves and they feel like they're getting that direction. But also share successes and highlight your employees who are going above and beyond, you know, in these difficult times, and show kudos to people, because that inspires not only them, but encourages your staff around them to actually appreciate each other and stay connected with one another. You know, you could invest in well-being, and I don't mean money, I just mean your time. You can look at, because investing in well-being bonds your employees together, but it is a challenging time for people's well-being with different situations. So you could look at group exercises, group exercise programs, or fun and engaging activities where you have online pub quizzes, or you could set up virtual lunches or Friday drinks. Or you may be, you know, you're probably very well connected in your space. So you could perhaps ask one of your contacts to speak to your employees about really powerful motivation topics, so they feel like they're getting that engagement from the employees, and they really want to work with them. You really want to work with your employees. And the other part is embracing feedback. So it's never been more important for employers to regularly check in on their staff. It's no replacement for that floor walking that I'm saying and catching people when they're in the kitchen and having that water cooler moment. But if you're running surveys just to check in on your employees, they will feel like they're being heard. They know what's going on and they're already anxious about it. So don't let the crisis go by without thinking, without giving them the opportunity to ask honest and open questions that will help them deal with their challenges that they're facing. And the final point around that is being flexible. Being flexible means supporting the changing demands of your employees to support them remain efficient and productive. So look at the processes that you have, and based on some of the feedback you've got, are there any small changes you could make that would add value to your employees? So this is your opportunity to build a legacy of dedicated employees that are invested in your business to increase retention in the future and ultimately increase the bottom line.
So it's quite an interesting comment there, isn't it? So what you're actually saying to that, Lauren, is that your management team and yourself as managers, owners, etc., are a walking marketing brand for your business and how your people perceive you as your business. So if you are not living by your brand and your values, then why would your staff deliver those brand and values and how they work from there? And what we're talking about in marketing, sometimes it's not having the big marketing campaigns, it's the small marginal changes that you make in the business that creates growth and drives growth from there. Now, it's very interesting, Paul and I have got a sort of a conversation here that will demonstrate the difference between a very people-based marketing strategy and a very bland marketing strategy, and how in the same year, two organizations from within the same company achieved great results, but what was the difference in the two great results? And what we're talking about is when Paul was the head of Office Angels and I was a director at Computer People, we both qualified for the Times Top 100 companies, but with a very different strategy and a very different out view. So Paul, I want you to give your view of that first, because obviously yours is quite an interesting view compared to what we did at Computer People.
Yeah, thanks, Howard. I mean, I have to say, when my marketing director came to me and said she wanted to enter Office Angels into the Sunday Times Top 100 Best Companies to Work For awards in the UK, I was terrified, because what it meant was that the Times would come in and interview anybody in the organisation, and we couldn't choose who they could speak to. Neither would we know in advance what the questions were, and neither would they show us the actual feedback. So we just had to let them enter the building, so to speak, and do what they needed to do. I said yes. I wasn't frightened, but I just wondered what feedback we would get, and I was absolutely over the moon, because I'll never forget, we went to the awards night. We knew we'd made the top 100, and it was this huge marquee in Battersea Park, and we just thought we were going there to get drunk, basically, and sort of end up about 95th. And they said, look, we're not going to bore you by running from 100 down to 1. We're going to just announce the top 10. And they started talking about 8th position. None of us were paying any attention on our table. And as I was kind of listening in the background to the description of this business that had been voted the 8th best large company to work for in the UK, it was becoming apparent to all of us that it was us. And we won. We came 8th in the country. You know, we beat people like Microsoft and Cadbury Schweppes and all the big corporations. And to this day, and we did it 2 years running, and to this day, it's still in my mind, if I feel my greatest achievement as a leader, if that's the expression, because that was voted for by the people that worked in my business. Excuse me. And that meant an unbelievable amount to me. And what was interesting is that, as we were talking earlier, and we're talking about EVP, we call it EVP these days. I don't think that expression existed when we were doing this back in those days, but we did accomplish that. What we did was we had a very clear understanding of who we were, what we did, why we did it, everything we talked about a moment ago. We weren't frightened to promote ourselves in the way, and our image, the image that we felt the public wanted to see. We were a fun brand. We were very serious about what we did as a business. We were very professional about providing unbelievably good candidates and temporary staff. We produced outstanding service to our clients. We were serious about our professionalism and what we did in our organization, but we did it with a smile on our faces. We did it with a fun image. And that, I think, had an enormous impact, as I said earlier, on the people that worked in the company. They loved it. They loved the brand. They were thrilled when they heard, say, me on the radio or somebody else on the TV, and they could talk to their partners, their friends, their neighbors, their mums, their dads, their brothers, their sisters. It had a big impact on them. And I think that we understood very clearly what that EVP thing was. And the third element of that EVP, by the way, is that we gave people enormous autonomy within the business. And the reason we were comfortable in giving them a great deal of autonomy was that we had this very deep vein of behaviors and values, the correct behaviors and values, driving through the company. And the people that we gave authority to and seniority to, they had completely bought in hearts and minds to the business. And they understood our mission, they understood our values, and they knew exactly what we were all about in every sense. We trusted them to make the right decisions, and they made the right decisions the vast majority of the time. You can't expect anybody to make the right decisions every time. None of us do that. But the majority of the time, they made brilliant decisions. And because we were able to trust people, and we were able to delegate to people in the organization, and we were able to promote people and develop their careers, we had an outstanding business. And that's a full circle back to how we ended up becoming a top 10 best company to work for in the UK. And I, as I say, immensely proud of that. It will always be something I'm immensely proud of. I think it had a lot to do with the marketing that we did, the branding that we did. But to your point, Howard, I think that we walked and talked the brand values as a leadership team. We understood what they were. It wasn't distinct. Branding and what we did wasn't something separate to the way we behaved and acted. They were the same thing. They were conjoined. And I think that completely cascaded down through the business. There wasn't a single person in my organization, from the person that started on their first day to the individual that had been with us for 16 years, that didn't understand in simple terms what we were all about or what we stood for and what our values were. And I think that contributed to a great fun environment and a hugely successful company.
I think that's quite really an interesting view when you look at the Adecco at the time, and I think there was about 10 or 15 brands in the UK in Adecco. And at the same year, CP, Computer People, went forward as well and put ourselves forward for the same awards. So following the same process, doing the same things. And we had a very big management style of, the managers working very much with hand in glove with the staff, really driving the staff, and to me, it was all about nurturing and developing staff and getting forward. But we never actually put any marketing strategy in place to actually deliver that. And it's quite interesting to sort of watch the difference when you certainly have your multiple locations all over the UK. And this is very much akin to what people are receiving now, as in people working from home. As a manager, I have to go to different houses all the time, so different offices in different locations, and then reinstall that brand, because I was the director, I was the manager, and reinstall that sort of brand proposition that's going through and how we work with that. And obviously, each individual manager and each individual office had a slight different brand view and a brand proposition, because we had no uniformity to our brand. We had no uniformity such as Office Angels, where we knew the big pink machine was coming all the time and was developing massive amounts of clients, and we were trying to sort of work out how they were doing that, and never even thought about the marketing that we did and the things they were doing for their clients and their candidates, but also for their staff from a marketing view. So as we're sat there in Battersea Park, Paul was on one side of the tent and we were on the other side of the tent, and the tent is probably about 2 or 3 football pitches large. It's a huge, great operation from there. And we, like Paul, was sat there listening away to what was going on. And we came round about, I think it was about 88th that year. So you can see a huge difference to what actually happens. Now, when I flip that to a different style and story, when we start to look about a single location, again, without a brand strategy, but from a management strategy. And this is where what Lauren's point were, which I found very interesting, that your management style is part of your brand strategy. If your managers don't deliver that brand strategy. When I was working at Evolution, we also applied for the Times Top 100 companies. And like Paul was sat there on a table, sat at the back, and it was quite interesting. Fiona Bruce was the compare that year. She'd walked around and almost spoke to every single table, and had completely missed our table out. And we were thinking, oh, that's a bit rude and a bit sort of what have you, and didn't think anything about it and carried on drinking away, etc., and chatting away. And they'd gone from top 10 and they got down to number 2. And they started to recite these comments. And the board of directors looked at each other and went, that sounds very much like us. Don't be daft. Can't be us. And it was. We came second at Evolution. So it was very interesting that we did that without any marketing per se to the people, but it was about the management brand that we brought to the people and how we brought the people on within the business and how we trained and developed people. So it's important to think that there's 2 strategies here. There's the actual physical marketing that goes on that Lauren's talking about, but then there's living that strategy and living to the values that is equally important to make sure that you move forward. And I think once you start to understand that you, as an owner of a business, you are your own brand, and if you don't live your brand strategy, then guess what? Your staff don't deliver that brand strategy back to you by going through their clients and through their candidates, and that coming around full circle, as Paul said. So I think it's very interesting sort of looking at that conversation there that Lauren brought out there about aligning your marketing strategy to your colleagues and to your clients' needs to ensure that your colleagues actually then deliver to your clients' needs and what's going on. Which sort of leads us to the next question. Everyone then talks about brand and what's going on. So how do you review what you're doing now in your marketing strategy? And is it effective in the new world, Lauren? Because obviously things have changed quite dramatically over the 15 weeks. So how do you think marketing has changed or should change?
Howard, with looking at marketing strategies, keeping your business in front of customers now could help you improve the perception of your brand, even if they're not buying right now. It's a point that we've mentioned quite a bit. So what you need to consider is, are the marketing strategies that you already have in place still fit for purpose? And that doesn't mean a complete do-over. It might just mean that it's a simple shift of strategy to audience or to type of message that you're sending out there. So it's a shift of priorities required to communicate with your customers and let them know that you're there for them, even if that means digitally. By focusing your service on that trust approach, because whilst we're in this situation, the sell approach has largely been parked, and it's really about building trust and credibility through trust, honesty, authenticity, and openness. So you have an opportunity to try to engage in new, more helpful ways. And that's what I mean about trust being so important. So knowing your brand and using your personality and tone of voice to its full strength by demonstrating that core purpose and serving customers in the truest sense of the word. So let's look at evaluating your marketing strategies at the moment, and what are the sort of tips when you're assessing your strategies, and where do you need to invest your time? So first and foremost, you need to look at evaluating your current images, your language, your tone of voice. Assess the assets you've got in your marketing toolkit and also the primary channel you utilize, and look at those assets from the point of view that we're in a situation with higher unemployment, anxiety, and a likely level of economic uncertainty. So are these assets still fit for purpose in line with the situation? Also, planning, preparing, and publishing. Content marketing is about answering your customers' questions. And it's likely that your customers might not be in the mindset to make a purchase decision right now. So focusing on meaningful content that resonates with your audience is important. Consider the context and the timing, of course, but use that information you collated that I mentioned earlier when we were talking about surveying your audience and finding out what their situation is now, and actually use that information to create answers and create valuable content that can actually support them in the now, to keep them loyal and in the future. And keep your communication on brand. So yes, communication needs to be sensitive, but that doesn't mean walk away from your brand you've established. Just make sure that any signage or social posts are still recognizably you as a brand. And providing information. So it doesn't mean that you're the guru for COVID information. There are plenty of websites for that out there. So you just want to provide informed content and information that suits your customers' needs, because more people are online than ever, and it's an opportunity to channel that communication. And effective communication doesn't necessarily mean frequent communication. You want to make sure that the information you're putting out there is effective because it's helpful. So consider helpful tips to support working remotely, or virtual onboarding, or running a recruitment process remotely, or maximizing video technology for interviews. And these type of ideas for providing information that you can advise on, that's going to give support to your audience. And then start collating all the resources that you're producing. So aggregate those resources, all the content you're writing, all the powerful pieces, all the surveys and the papers you're writing to help people in this situation, and convert them into a resource portal or a page even that can be promoted at category level. So you're starting to build up a toolkit to support your customers' needs, and it allows you to continually promote it. So it's building its own, it's building a lasting channel for you to promote in different ways, and you're scaling it up. The next point is around contribution. So contribute. Don't be afraid to contribute when it's appropriate for you to do so. So you are all experts in your field. You understand the business, and there are areas where your input could be absolutely valuable. So it's about engaging with the community to add value and help in any way you can. And if there are any topics on specific trade presses or anything along those lines, that are being published, offer to contribute to it, because that's earned media. And again, it's that organic visibility as opposed to paid for channels. And it is you contributing what you know and your valuable insights. And it's important to remain socially engaged. So social media, as we know, can be incredibly volatile. This often means that in sensitive situations, people stay well clear of it. A completely understandable reaction. But regardless of that, it is still a primary channel in which to engage your audience. So think about just being authentic, honest, and helpful. It's a great foundation for building trust and relationships. One thing not to forget about, oh, sorry, Howard, were you going to say something?
No.
Sorry, I thought you were going to jump in. One thing not to forget is around email marketing. Utilize email marketing to spread, the insights that you're creating from all the content you've collated, but also actually to reach out and collate that information. You have a database of clients and candidates, and you should be reaching out to those as well as complementing your activity across your social channels.
So it's quite interesting there. So, one of the questions we keep asked all the time is how often should we market and where should we be marketing to? And I always think that, marketing is a very, very dual product, that you have your outside marketing to your candidates and clients, as in LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, etc. And obviously you'll know where your clients hang out. And it's interesting, I always speak to clients and say, okay, let's go to a pub and stand in a pub. Now let's look into the pub. Now tell me who's a client and who's a candidate. And they go, we can't. I said, well, that's exactly the same as when you go onto Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, etc. You can't tell who's a client and who a candidate is. So your marketing has to be to your marketplace, and it shouldn't be sort of generic. And then the other side I always think is, you see a lot of agencies who just put jobs out. Well, there's only a small percentage of the market that looks for a job at any one time. Obviously that's going to grow in the next period or short-term period, but then it will shrink again. So again, you're negating the vast majority of your marketplace and all your clients. So we've got to start to think about marketing it in that way, that how's it do. So the question is, how often should you be posting something, and should that be posting just the outside market? Because lots of agencies completely ignore their inside market, and their inside market is all their candidates and all their clients that they've already procured and paid a massive amount of money for, that are sat on their database that they never actually market to. So give us your view on how often you should market to both those marketplaces, really. Look.
So Howard, when you were talking about, I'll answer that question in a minute, it just made me think of something else. When you were talking about marketing to the existing customer and client database, it is absolutely pivotal, and it's probably a whole nother webinar, if I'm honest, on customer engagement. It's a piece that's very important and that we can expand at another time. But in terms of how often should you post, you should be really asking yourself the question of which channels are getting the best results for you. Because again, it's not just about posting on every channel. You want to identify where you're getting the most engagement so that you can target the channel that's giving you the best response and use the other channels as almost satellites of those. So that's what's really important to remember. And it's not a case of how many posts a day. Should I post 3 times a day, or whatever the case may be? You need to create the strategy of what you want to be promoting. You know, are you looking at jobs, as you mentioned, Howard, or are you looking at specific content? Have you got events coming up? So if you plan, say, a month in advance as an absolute minimum of what you want to be discussing, that will ultimately define the level of volume that you should be posting. And also you need to consider that contribution isn't necessarily posting a piece of content or sharing a valuable piece of insight from another source. You could be doing that on a daily basis in any event. So it's not just about thinking I have to write so much content to promote. It's just about engaging with your audience in a way that's going to add value to them, instead of just flooding the market or flooding the social channels with the same information but expecting different results.
I mean, I'd add to that point. I think a lot of marketing for me in our industry is really about engaging candidates. I mean, picking up on that point. You know, I've worked with a lot of recruitment businesses over the last 10, 11 years. And sometimes there's a view that marketing should be about attracting clients. And I've got a big issue with that. Excuse me. And I'm sure lots of people will agree with me as they're listening to this. You know, we win clients through different methods. But in the end, and you keep using this word, Lauren, and I agree with you entirely, it's about trust. And it's also about, in other words you've used frequently, authenticity. Now, I think that you win clients, good old-fashioned communication. You get in touch with people. It can be very difficult, we know that, but you eventually speak to somebody. Hopefully you can convert that into a face-to-face meeting or a virtual meeting, and you start to build that trusted advisor positioning. Marketing helps you in the sense that they recognize your brand, but it's very rare in my experience for an employer to use a recruitment business purely based upon how lovely their website looked, or the fact that they've read a blog or they've seen some video somewhere. That just really doesn't work. It supports the work that we do in an office, where we're actually reaching out and using our emotional intelligence, our individual skill sets, our attributes as human beings to reach out and connect with people and convert them to what we're doing and who we are and what we provide. That, I think, is a sales job, if you like. It's about promoting the business off the back of the persona of the business. Business comes in because of that effort. I think marketing largely supports candidate attraction and retention. As Howard said, we've got huge volumes of people on our database. They need to be consistently communicated with. Obviously, we're always searching externally for additional skilled candidates. That's something else we do. And I think that marketing has a big impact on your ability to attract great candidates. And if you think about that logically, you know, our stock in trade, our products, our candidates, you know, if we were a retail business, this is what we put on our shelves. So you could ultimately go out and do a brilliant job in promoting your business. But if when the shop doors are open, people walk into your store and there's nothing to purchase on the shelves, well, you've not done a very good job, have you? So, you know, this constant flow of great quality candidates is our stock in trade. And I believe earnestly that marketing is about consistently marketing to candidates to make sure that there's huge flow of great people. Now, if you then link that back to the why people would work for you, that's a very big reason. If as consultants, they consistently talk to great candidates, people they can promote, people they can market to employers, that they will ultimately place in jobs permanently or contract or temp jobs, that then impacts their income, their revenue, their opportunity to make money. That's a pretty sound reason for wanting to be in that recruitment business, I would suggest. And if you then talk about the internal culture that you're developing alongside your marketing strategies, well, you've got the glue that keeps people to your organization, both internally and externally. So I think the whole point about marketing is that it's certainly attractive to your people, but it is a three-dimensional element. When we look at marketing for our businesses, it's about, as you said eloquently, Lauren, it's about engaging with your people, but it's also, of course, about the other two markets, important markets, our candidates, our products, and of course, the people that purchase our products, the employers. Those things are indivisible. You have to bring them together as one. So a very sound, well thought through marketing campaign or marketing proposition isn't something you can come about by standing in a room for a half an hour and writing a few words up on a whiteboard. It needs an awful lot of work and a lot of in-depth thinking. I mean, we had a debate, Howard and I, at length with you, Lauren, about the word community, did we not? What does community mean? I think we spent about an hour on that one word trying to define it. Caused a few, I wouldn't say arguments, but a few raised voices trying to figure it all out. But this was relevant to our website content, and it was a really important word that we needed to understand. So these things are very important. It takes a lot of work, a lot of effort, and it's not and you don't just do marketing once and think that's it, we've done it. As with all good business, it's an ongoing commitment. A bit like going to the gym, you've got to do it every day.
It's that consistency, Paul. It's that fourth C, you know, breeding that dependability, that consistent experience across everything you're doing. It's what builds that trust and what, you know, sustains your customers and actually builds on those customers.
And this word trust, just another last point, because I know we're running out of time, Howard. I can see him twitching. But I think that this word trust is so important. I mean, it's maybe the most important word. It's the word I consistently use with all my clients. We talk about trusted advisor positioning with clients and candidates. Trust, trust, trust. If your employees trust you as leaders, they trust the brand, they trust the direction, they trust the vision, they trust. You have a brilliant business. And that's what all of us, in working and developing our companies, it's all about that one word. And I'll say this very important point. It takes a long time to build trust with clients and candidates and with your people. And it takes a nanosecond to lose it. So once you have it and you hold it in the palm of your hand, nurture it, look after it, because it's something unbelievably valuable.
So I think to answer, sort of to try, we have one question left, and I think the question is quite an important question to ask, and therefore we need to be sort of fairly pointed to answer this question. It's all about the return on investment, and lots of people ask when we talk about putting marketing strategies in, how do they track their marketing investment? Is it something that they can track? What are they looking for? I think Paul's talked something a little bit there about that soft feel where you're speaking to a client and they go, I've never spoken to you before, but I've seen your marketing everywhere. So it turns a sort of a cold call almost into a warm call to a certain degree. Same with candidates. And I think that this point of view is that how we track marketing investment is really important. So Lauren, talk to me about how you would track marketing investment.
Tracking marketing is very important. You know, it's making sure, obviously from the brand perspective, that we're building and establishing that brand, but how can we convert that into tangible numbers? And it really does depend on, Howard, on the specific channels you're utilizing. And there's also two aspects of it. There's the numbers perspective, and there's the sentiment. You can't ignore measuring the sentiment, and you can do that because the general feel that customers are having with you and your employees will actually improve productivity, which means that it's going to improve your bottom line effectively. So sentiment is actually important. But the measurements you can look at from a social perspective is you can look at the types of channels you're focusing on, what sort of content are you putting out there, what are the amount of views you're getting, the impressions you're getting, but also what are the comments you're getting, the shares you're getting, because that means that people aren't just reading it, they're actually engaging with that content. So yes, it's good to see how many views you're getting on specific content, but it's important to see if they're being shared or if they're being commented on, because people are then engaging with your brand. And that's the difference between being a crowd surfer and reading the content versus actually engaging with your brand. So that's something to look at on your social channels. From your website perspective, if you simply connect your website to the back end of Google Analytics, you can get an absolute raft of information. And then if you're looking from the media, the actual paid for inventory, this is the one that you want to measure because this is what you're actively paying for. A lot of organizations, if they're slightly smaller, they might not have software to be able to do this for you. And there is a manual element about it. But what you want to do is you want to be seeing sentiment from a sentiment perspective from your employees, what channels they feel they're getting the best benefit from there, and really drill down into that and say, right, why do you think you're getting the best result? How many placements have you made off the back of that? And start pushing your employees for those type of numbers, because the reality is sometimes if you want to take something away from an employee, they go, oh, no, it's one of our best things we've got. But actually, if you look at it in an unbiased way, you can determine how many applications you're getting in, are any of those converting into placements, or you're just getting a high volume of applications? Or if there's something that might be getting a lower volume of applications, but is getting a higher conversion rate, perhaps you should look at reducing the tap there, for example, and shifting your tactic into another way. So measuring the success is incredibly important, and not just once a year when your contract's coming up for renewal. You need to measure the success on an ongoing basis, because actually what it can do is also highlight some training elements for your staff. You know, are they using the tool in the best way? So yes, you're getting a good return from this tool, but how can we now make it better? Right, so perhaps we aren't putting consistent posts up. There might be a number of things that you've noticed that people use it in different ways, and the types of messaging they're sending candidates is not as consistent with the purpose that you like. So you look at training that, and you'll immediately see an additional increase in their efficiency because they've been guided by how to use that, that tool or other tools really efficiently. So measuring, absolutely important. You can also measure sentiment. Don't put that aside just because it's not a tangible return on investment number, but also you do need to look at the tangible returns for the media you're paying for.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I think sort of to conclude then, there's one sort of thing that I always say that about, certainly on LinkedIn, Twitter and things like that, the algorithms that they use are very important. And what I tend to find is some of the bigger organizations, and certainly the small organizations, they're putting market material out, but then no one's liking and sharing that market material. So if you look at LinkedIn, the algorithm is, if you put a post out today, now, this minute, and then someone likes it within 30 seconds, and a couple of minutes later someone else likes it, someone else likes it, instantly LinkedIn looks at it and goes, this post is of worthiness, therefore they'll promote that post even more. But also everybody who's liking it, it's also opening it up to their marketplace as well. So it's expanding the actual reach of that post. And if you then start to share it as well, then again, LinkedIn starts to drive that then and starts to pull it up people's feeds, etc. So I think it's important that whatever we're doing from a marketing point of view, that everyone in the business is involved in that, liking, sharing, putting comments on, to make sure that people are interactive with that. And therefore it drives it deeper into the heart of your client and candidate bed constantly. It's a really important thing that lots of other people just like, well, the marketing guys are dealing with that and never interact with it. Well, if you want to see interaction on your marketing, then they also need to be interactive as well, or your staff need to be interactive as well.
And so Howard, that comes back to, sorry, one more point, I promise it's only one. That comes back to the brand purpose we were talking about. If all your staff are engaged with who you are, how you communicate, why you communicate, people will start liking and sharing organically, because it'll bring that sales and marketing harmony that you want. Instead of just telling someone, can you like that? Well, why am I liking it? Why am I sharing it? It's not relevant to my own people. So you want to make sure that you take it back to that brand purpose, because the more people are engaged and bought into that, the more they'll do collaboratively. Indeed.
Well, Lauren, that's been a really interesting hour. You said it would go quickly, or it wouldn't go quickly. You said if Paul and I are honest, when we normally write a small script, which is usually about 5 sentences long. Lauren sent us a small script that was going to be a mini series on Netflix for about 5 series. And she was worried about not having enough content for an hour. And then I liked at the bit at the end there, Lauren, when you said, I've got enough content now for another webinar, because the person who didn't want to be on the webinar at all was you, Lauren. So I'm quite glad that you've got another webinar. That's for us to sort out, pull and produce and put out there. Guys, I'd like to thank you for listening, and thank you for staying for just over the hour. It's been very much appreciated. If you've got any questions, feel free to put those questions up now. Or if you want to have a conversation with Lauren about marketing, by all means, get in contact with Paul, get in contact with myself, okay? And we will put you in contact with Lauren. You can find Lauren on LinkedIn as well. So look for Lauren on LinkedIn. If there's anything else that anyone's got any questions, then, you know, once again, thanks for attending. It's been much appreciated, and we wish you all a very happy week.
Have a great time, everybody. Have a great week ahead. Thanks again.
Thank you very much, everybody, for your time. Stay safe and stay focused.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care, everyone. Bye.
Bye.